Hello Stampers, Jackie Bolhuis from Klompen Stampers. I am so excited to stamp a card with you today using the brand new Forever Fern Stamp set. Now, if you didn't watch my video on Wednesday, you probably missed me saying, I think this is my favorite new set out of the catalog. It's amazing. I'm probably going to use this one like crazy. I hope you don't get sick of me using it. But what I want to share with you today is a really simple, fun card using the stamp set. This is going to be great for quick and easy cards, but also it's a great one for like if you want to putz around and add a lot of stuff to it, okay? So, you know, a beginner card, or for those of you that are more avid, you are going to love the stamp set. So we're going to sneak peek a card with it today. It's not available until June 3rd, but also on June 3rd, I'm going to release my brand new online stamping class that's going to feature this stamp set. So I just want to kind of tease you a little bit with what's coming. You guys are going to love this. And that stamp class is also going to be Fun Folds. It'll be part 3 of my Fun Folds series of classes. So let's flip the camera down and let's get stamping with this new stamp set. Now here's a look at the stamp set. It's also a bundle, so it has coordinating dies. Today we're not going to use the dies. Today we want to just focus on the stamp set. So those of you that are more beginner stampers and you haven't really jumped into die cutting yet, it's a great stamp set all on its own. Speaking of die cutting, yes, the buzz is out there. Stampin' Up has come out with finally their own die cutting machine. It's not going to be available on June 3rd though. You'll see it in the catalog, and they said it's going to be available soon. So as soon as I have the dates, I'll let you know. But let's set that aside. And like I said, we're going to just stamp today. Oh, now speaking of the new catalog, you know what? Let me just share a peek of the cover. According to Stampin' Up rules, I can't show you the inside of it until it goes live. But there's the cover. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up demonstrator that has sent you a catalog and you would like one, I'd love to send you one. Hop over to my website. Link will be down in the video description. And up at the top, click on catalogs and you can request one there. And we'll get it right in the mail to you. Okay, whew, that was a lot of chatting. We just want to stamp. So for today's card, like I said, it's a simple card. I guess we call it a SIP card. Stamps, ink, and paper is all I'm using. I like to do these simple cards. So I have 3 of the different ferns. Now I keep calling them all ferns, but I guess technically they're not really ferns, but I don't know the proper names. So we're just gonna call them ferns. So we're gonna take the first one here, and I have shaded spruce. You know, what I love about greens are you can mix and match all the different greens and they look so awesome together. So what I'm going to do is just kind of stamp one here, but then before I set the stamp down, I'm going to stamp it a second time, just so I get a couple of different shades of each of the greens in here to even give my card more kind of dimensional look. Now, I want to share a little tip with what I just did there. Notice I went dark, stamped it again. You want to be careful, and people have done this and they've asked me why they get these funny lines. If I don't know how to explain. If I would stamp this, my first stamp, let's say over here, and I came off the paper, which is perfectly good. I love to come off the paper. But now if I do my second stamping, so I move it over here and I stamp it to get a second lighter shade, can you see this line? And I've had people ask me, why does my stamps leave a line? This line is from when I stamped over here because the ink did not get off of that kind of side of the stamp, I guess. So when I moved it over to get the lighter stamping, I still had full strength ink there. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of hard to describe. So if you're doing something like I am, where you're stamping off your paper and you want to do a darker and a lighter shade, make sure that the darker one is completely on there before you move it over. Okay, make sense? Rather than the dark one off. Okay, now we could, in this case, we could definitely do dark and then come over here and let the light off, okay, because that doesn't matter, but you don't want to do dark and then move it over. So there's that tip. You know, I'm always full of all kinds of tips as I'm stamping with you guys that will help you not only make this card, but just in your stamping in general. So let's grab another one here. And I think this one we will use Pear Pizzazz. So this is a much bigger one. So I think we're going to just kind of come there. And then let's put another one here. All I'm really doing is taking the different fern images, which aren't really ferns, but we're going to call them ferns, and fill this in. So we'll go ahead here and we'll do a dark and a light. We can bring in another one here, put a little light there, and we need a little something right there. I'm just kind of spinning my card around, trying to just get the ferns coming from all different directions to fill it in. Now, here is my magic trick of the day. I am so excited. Those of you that have been stampers for a long time, you know that years ago, we had several versions of what I call the speckle stamp. I think you could even buy it as an individual stamp, and it was called the speckle stamp. It speckles. I don't know what else to call it. But this is one of those stamps that, to me, just brings this card to life. Now, there's a couple tricks again. You do what you don't want to do. Let's go over to this one. You don't want to ink this up and stamp really heavy and stamp really heavy and stamp really heavy. That looks kind of yucky. What you want to do is ink this up and super, super light touch. I'm not even going to let the whole stamp hit. And we're going to stamp it a couple of times. And we're going to just put a few super gentle speckles. Don't overkill it. But to me, that just really brought those images to life and added so much to that simply stamped card. Now, let's grab our adhesive. And my white here, I don't think I told you, was 4.5 by 3.25. Now, don't worry about these measurements. I will have a link down in that video description, not only to go find where you can get a catalog, but also I'll have pictures of my card as well as all the supplies I use and all the measurements. I like to call it a card recipe, but that'll be over there for you. So I just layered that onto a shaded spruce piece that was just an 1/8 inch bigger. And then we're going to go ahead and layer that onto my Pear Pizzazz card base. Whoops, that slid on me. There we go. Okay, there's that one. Don't forget to stamp the inside. So I'm going to really do kind of the exact same thing here. To stamp a couple down in that corner and a couple in that corner. I almost did what I told you not to do. Now, we need greetings, and this stamp set also has good greetings. So I have a couple of tips for greetings with you today too, not only for this card, but any card in general. Now, quite often for my greetings, I want just a little tiny strip. And people ask, well, what size is it? It is, or they ask, what size is it? And I don't really know, and it really doesn't matter, because I have found when you, especially with greetings, and if you want your layer to just be the size of your greeting, the best thing you can do is stamp and then cut it out. Now, here's some tips. We're actually going to do an outside greeting and an inside greeting, and I've got different tips for each one. So first, let's do the outside one, which we're going to put on a piece of layer cardstock. So I take my block and I have lined it up on my grid paper. So it is flush down here. Use that grid paper. And then I'm going to use my stamp, and this is hard. I got to put my head like straight up from it. And I am looking through to see those grid lines and getting it nice and straight on there. Now, I always like to kind of test it. And when I test it, what I do is I stamp on the grid paper, again, with lining the block up on a grid, and that looks pretty straight. So now we're going to take the scrap paper, which I stamped images on. We'll go over here. And what I want to do is, I could tell when I did it on scrap paper there, that really this long part of the image right here is pretty straight. So I'm going to line that up as close as I can to the bottom. I have to be mindful of the Y on the U, but I want to get as close as I can to this edge and straight. Because then what I'm going to do is grab my paper cutter, whichever kind of paper cutter you use, but I'm going to go ahead and line this up. And here I know where my cutting line is, so I'm going to kind of move it over. Let's see, I got kind of a funny glare here, because I want to cut as close to the top as I can. And then I'm going to go ahead and just trim off these edges. So that's why when I don't generally put measurements in my card recipes for little pieces that are cut down to the size of the image, because it really is easier to stamp and then just trim it, and then size does not matter. So let's go ahead and use some dimensionals on this one, and we're going to just pop that up onto our card like so. So there is the front of our card. Now I told you I had a couple of tips for the inside greeting as well, because we're going to stamp that on here. Well, and these tips kind of overlap, but here it's more critical that I'm able to stamp my image straight because I'm not cutting it out. So once again, I am going to find a clean spot here on my paper. I'm going to line my block up. I'm just looking at the grid lines down in the bottom. So my block is square. And then I'm going to take my image, and this one's kind of hard because it's not like a super straight looking image on the rubber. And we're going to put it down there. So it should be straight, but half the time I don't get it straight. So again, I'm going to stamp on my grid paper. Now I can, since the block's square, I can line up this edge or any of the edges. So I'll just look at this one right here, and I'm going to stamp it. And I can look and I'm like, wow, that's pretty straight or square on the block. So now when I go to stamp on my card, again, depending on where I want to put my image, got to put my head over the top of it here. I'm lining up the block with the top of my piece of cardstock, and that should give me a pretty straight image on there. So there's your greeting tips. Let's go ahead and stick this on the inside. And we're going to call our SIP card done. SIP is a term I've used quite often. I have a lot of other SIP cards I've shared. Basically, it means stamps, ink, and paper. That's all you need. Now, in this case, these products are part of a suite. There's gorgeous designer series paper and ribbon and the dies and the whole shebang, which I will be sharing with you next week when I debut my brand new online class. I can't wait to share the fun full class with this suite of products. But today I just wanted to stamp a simple card for you, let you start falling in love with my favorite card or my favorite stamp set in the brand new catalog. So once again, reach out to me if I can help you in any way. If you have questions, if you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and would like a catalog, hop over to my website and request one there. So until I stamp with you next week, have a stamp happy day.